In a world that constantly tells you to be visible, to prove yourself, to respond and react, what happens if you choose to simply return to yourself? Let that question sit with you for a moment. What happens when you no longer chase validation? When you no longer allow someone else's chaos to become your weather? What happens when, this year, you place your full attention inward, not as escape, but as a sacred responsibility? We often speak of success, of love, of peace, but rarely do we speak of the soil they grow from. That soil is you, and if the soil is not nurtured, no relationship, no career, no desire will take root in a lasting way. So this year, 2026, what if your only resolution is this: I will no longer abandon myself? This isn't about selfishness. It's about self-return. Welcome to Self-Mastery, a dedicated space for timeless wisdom, emotional clarity, and inner transformation. If today's message resonates with you, we invite you to subscribe and stay connected to this journey of self-awareness and growth. Remember the name, Self-Mastery, where depth matters more than noise. We'd also love to hear from you. Which insight or moment spoke to you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's get started. In the quiet hours of the early morning, when the world hasn't yet started to shout its demands, there exists a kind of clarity. In that silence, many people discover something they've long forgotten: their own presence. Not the presence that others notice or compliment, but the deeper, quieter awareness that asks no questions and seeks no applause. It is within this awareness that a person begins to understand everything they've been chasing. Love, peace, success, validation begins inside, not outside. And this realization leads to the first and most vital truth: the center is within, not in the world. When people grow up, they are taught to look outward. Approval from parents, recognition from teachers, attention from friends. These are the early currencies of value. By the time someone enters adulthood, they're already conditioned to think, if I want to be happy, I must change the world around me. If someone is unkind, they must change. If a job is stressful, it must be fixed. If a partner doesn't understand them, the partner must evolve. Rarely does one pause and ask, what is my inner state while all this is happening? But the world doesn't operate on our schedule. It doesn't stop because we're tired. People won't always speak kindly. Circumstances won't always align with our preferences. And so the cycle continues, reacting, defending, pleasing, adjusting. Over time, this becomes exhausting, not because life is inherently overwhelming, but because we've lost our center. Like a tree with shallow roots, any wind threatens our stability. A woman once shared a story of her marriage. She had been married for over 15 years, and during those years, she felt like she was constantly adjusting herself to maintain peace. Her husband was emotionally distant. Her children were demanding. Her in-laws were critical. She tried everything: counseling, communication workshops, self-help books. But nothing changed. One day, in the middle of folding laundry, she broke down. Not out of anger or despair, but because she realized something quietly profound. She hadn't truly been herself for years. Every response she gave, every action she took was a performance shaped by fear. Fear of conflict, fear of rejection, fear of being seen as not enough. And so she decided to stop, not to rebel, not to blame, but to return. She started waking up an hour earlier just to sit in silence. She began journaling, not to analyze her life, but to meet herself again. She started noticing how her body tensed in conversations, how her mind raced when she was criticized, how she avoided her own reflection. Slowly, she began to reclaim her center. And from that center, something unexpected happened. Her marriage didn't transform overnight, but her reactions did. She no longer argued to prove her worth. She listened without absorbing. She responded, not to fix others, but to remain in alignment with herself. This is the power of knowing that the center is within. When you live from your center, you become less reactive. You recognize that people are not obstacles to your peace. They're mirrors reflecting your relationship with yourself. If you feel invalidated by someone's coldness, it's often because a part of you still doubts your worth. If you feel desperate for attention, it may be because you haven't been giving yourself your own presence. This internal awareness is not merely philosophical. It is biological. Neuroscience has revealed that the human brain constantly seeks safety, familiarity, and belonging. When we don't have a strong internal compass, we outsource our sense of security to external cues. We watch for facial expressions, we interpret tone, we seek approval in likes, messages, and applause. This creates a constant loop of anxiety and dependency. But when you return to your center, when you learn to witness your emotions rather than be ruled by them, your brain begins to rewire. The amygdala, the center of emotional reactivity, starts to calm. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for reasoning and choice, becomes more active. This is not spiritual escapism. It is scientific transformation. People often ask, but if I focus only on myself, won't that be selfish? The answer lies in how you define focus. Focusing on yourself does not mean isolating yourself or ignoring others. It means becoming so inwardly rooted that your actions come from clarity, not compulsion. It means taking responsibility for your peace rather than demanding that others create it for you. It means understanding that no amount of love from the outside can fill the absence of love on the inside. Imagine a man in his 40s who constantly feels abandoned in his relationships. Every time a friend cancels plans or a partner needs space, he spirals into anxiety. He texts repeatedly. He interprets silence as rejection. Eventually, people pull away, not because they dislike him, but because his energy feels heavy, even suffocating. But if he pauses and traces that anxiety back, he might discover a childhood where emotional availability was scarce, a home where affection had to be earned. His present-day panic isn't about the friend or the partner. It's about the unresolved past that still echoes in his nervous system. Focusing on himself, in this case, means gently untangling those roots. It means building a relationship with the boy inside him who once felt forgotten. Only then can he show up in relationships as a full man, not a child seeking rescue. This is why inner work is the most compassionate work. It prevents us from wounding others with our unhealed wounds. It breaks cycles of projection and blame, and it gives us the strength to walk away from what harms us, not in anger, but in peace. Because when your center is intact, you no longer seek chaos to prove your resilience. You simply choose peace because it matches your vibration. But to stay in your center requires more than intention. It requires attention. And this brings us to the next vital truth. Energy follows attention. In today's world, attention is currency. Every notification, every headline, every scroll on your screen is competing for a piece of your mind. If you are not intentional, your focus becomes fragmented. And a fragmented focus leads to a fragmented life. Your attention is sacred. Where you place it determines what grows. From a psychological standpoint, this is known as neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself based on repeated experiences and focus. If every day you focus on what you lack, your brain will become an expert at spotting deficiency. If you consistently focus on what others think of you, your brain will amplify social anxiety. But if you choose, consciously, persistently, to place your attention on your own growth, on your habits, on your emotional state, something begins to shift, slowly at first, but profoundly. A woman once shared that she used to wake up each morning and check her phone immediately. Messages, missed calls, social media. By 8 a.m., her energy was already outside of her. She hadn't even checked in with her own breath. One day, she decided to leave her phone in another room and begin her day with a 5-minute body scan, just noticing where tension lived in her body. After a few weeks, she realized she was less reactive to criticism at work. She no longer needed her partner to validate her every move. She felt anchored, all because her attention had returned home. Energy is not infinite, and every person has a limited emotional capacity each day. If that energy is spent worrying about people's opinions, scrolling through conflict online, or rehashing past arguments in your mind, then there's very little left for what truly matters: your peace, your purpose, your personal healing. Think of your attention like sunlight. A beam of sunlight scattered across a field warms the surface. But that same beam, focused through a magnifying glass, can ignite fire. When your focus is scattered, your power is diluted. But when your focus is unified, when you decide, this year, I will focus only on myself, you ignite change. Real, tangible, sustainable change. This also affects how you show up in relationships. When your energy is focused on your own alignment, you stop seeking control. You begin to listen more and react less. You stop needing others to behave a certain way in order for you to feel okay. This creates space for honesty, for growth, for intimacy, because the safest people in the world to love are the ones who don't use others to escape themselves. There's a story of a man who had been in and out of relationships for most of his adult life. Every time something felt uncomfortable, too much distance, too much vulnerability, he would sabotage. It wasn't intentional, it was protective. One day, after a painful breakup, he went to a silent retreat. No phones, no conversations, just him and his thoughts. The first few days were tormenting. Every insecurity screamed, every memory returned. But as the silence deepened, he began to feel something else's space, the kind of space that reveals, not hides. He realized he had been using relationships to avoid being alone, not because he feared solitude, but because he feared meeting his own reflection. When he returned from the retreat, he didn't immediately seek a new relationship. Instead, he focused on building consistency. Morning walks, healthy food, writing, breathwork, not to impress anyone, not to fix himself, but to honor the life within him. And when he eventually did meet someone again, it was different. He wasn't trying to impress. He wasn't afraid of silence. He was simply present. Because his attention wasn't scattered. It was sacred. This is what happens when you take your attention back from the world and place it where it belongs, on the self. It's not about being self-centered. It's about being centered in the self. As this new year unfolds, many will make resolutions. They will try to control weight, relationships, finances. But very few will ask, where is my attention going every day? And is it building the life I want to live? If your attention is a garden, what have you been watering? Resentment, comparison, regret, or patience, peace, presence? There is no need to wait for the world to change. Begin with your breath. Begin with a single thought. Begin with a gentle return to yourself. And from that sacred place, everything else will begin to move, naturally, quietly, and powerfully. There is a silence that speaks louder than any noise ever could. Not the silence of absence, but the silence of presence. It is the kind of stillness that does not demand attention, but invites awareness. This silence, when embraced, reveals a deeper layer of life. It peels away the chaos, the distractions, the layers of identity that we gather from the world. And in that moment of stillness, we do not become something new. We simply meet what has always been there, ourselves, in a world obsessed with volume of success, of opinions, of social attention. Choosing stillness becomes an act of rebellion. But more than that, It becomes an act of remembrance. You begin to remember who you are without the labels, without the masks, without the noise that says you must be constantly improving, constantly achieving, constantly seen. It is in silence that true identity begins to form. And yet, most people avoid silence because they fear what it might reveal. They fill their hours with sound. Television in the background, music in the car, podcasts while cooking, conversations on the phone. Not because these things are harmful, but because silence can be confronting. It leaves you with no one else to face but yourself. And that, for many, is terrifying. But silence is not the enemy. It is the teacher. In Eastern traditions, silence is not the absence of sound. It is the presence of awareness. It is the space between thoughts where wisdom waits patiently. Neuroscience supports this as well. When the brain is no longer overloaded with stimulation, the default mode network activates. A part of the brain associated with introspection, creativity, and self-referencing. This is where insight arises. Not when you are running, but when you are still. There was once a man who had spent his whole life in movement, always chasing the next promotion, the next relationship, the next achievement. His calendar was filled and his mind was louder than ever. But after a sudden health scare, he was forced to rest. At first, the stillness felt unbearable. There was nothing to distract him from the thoughts he had long buried, regrets, fears, guilt. But after a few weeks of solitude, something shifted. He stopped running from the discomfort. He started journaling. He began sitting in silence, even if just for 10 minutes a day. And in that stillness, he met a version of himself he didn't know existed. Not the achiever, not the provider, just the being. For the first time in decades, he felt peace. This is why letting silence shape your identity is not weakness, it is strength. Because when you stop performing for the world, you start performing for your soul. You no longer make decisions to impress others. You make them to remain in alignment. You no longer speak just to be heard. You speak to share truth. You no longer listen to reply. You listen to understand. In relationships, this depth becomes a rare and sacred gift. Most conflicts between people arise not because of difference, but because of disconnection. Not from each other, but from the self. When someone doesn't know how to sit in their own silence, they become reactive. They speak from impulse rather than wisdom. They defend instead of understand. But when you cultivate inner stillness, you create a gap between stimulus and response. That gap becomes your power. That gap is where self-mastery begins. Think of a couple who constantly argues. Not because they don't love each other, but because they both react quickly. One says something sharp and the other fires back. Voices rise, emotions flare, and walls build. But now imagine one of them begins practicing silence. Not silence as a weapon, but as awareness. They learn to pause before reacting. They begin to feel their emotions without being enslaved by them. Slowly, their tone changes, their words soften, and something magical begins to happen. The other partner, who is used to conflict, starts to mirror that calm. Not out of obligation, but because presence is contagious. This is not a fantasy. It is what happens when one person chooses to become still. When one person stops making the relationship a battleground and starts making it a mirror. Silence doesn't mean suppression. It means preparation. You speak less, but when you do, your words carry more weight. You don't avoid difficult conversations. You enter them with clarity, not confusion. In the spiritual sense, silence is the doorway to authenticity, but in the psychological sense, it is the foundation of emotional regulation. When you allow yourself to feel in silence, your nervous system learns that it is safe to experience emotions without needing to act them out. You begin to realize that not every thought requires a response. Not every emotion needs to be shared. And not every conflict needs to be resolved immediately. Some things just need space. There is a quote that says, "The quieter you become, the more you can hear." But what is it that we are meant to hear? Often, it's not answers. It's patterns. It's noticing how often your inner voice speaks in judgment, or how quickly you assume someone is against you, or how deeply you've been carrying a story about your worth. These realizations do not come through arguments or debates. They come through quiet attention. And once you see them, you can change them. Letting silence shape your identity also means being willing to disappoint others for the sake of being true to yourself. Not everyone will understand your calm. Some may even misinterpret your silence as weakness or indifference. But that is not your concern. Your responsibility is not to manage others' interpretations. It is to remain in integrity. And integrity is not loud, it is still. It is consistent. It is unwavering. The gift of this kind of inner quiet is that you stop chasing roles. You stop needing to be the perfect friend, the perfect partner, the perfect anything. You start being real. And in that authenticity, relationships either deepen or dissolve. But either way, truth leads. And that truth leads to the next unfolding insight. Relationships mirror your inner terrain. This may be difficult to accept, especially for those who feel they've been mistreated, misunderstood, or manipulated. But if you can sit with this truth, not as blame, but as empowerment, it will change everything. We often believe that relationships are about compatibility, similar values, shared goals, emotional chemistry. And while all these things are important, they are not the foundation. The foundation is self-awareness, because no matter how kind or loving someone is, if you are carrying unresolved pain, that pain will filter how you experience the relationship. If you believe you are unworthy of love, then even genuine affection will feel suspicious. If you have been abandoned before, then even healthy space may feel like rejection. If you've never felt heard, then even simple silence may trigger panic. You are not seeing the person. You are seeing your wounds. This is why the most loving thing you can do for a relationship is to heal yourself, not perfectly, not entirely, but actively. You begin to question your assumptions. You start noticing your projections. You catch yourself before you collapse into old patterns. Take the example of a woman who constantly attracts emotionally unavailable men. Each relationship follows the same pattern: deep, initial connection, followed by withdrawal, followed by heartbreak. She begins to believe that all men are the same, that love is pain. But if she pauses long enough to reflect, she might notice something deeper. Her own father was present physically, but distant emotionally. She learned at a young age to chase affection, to earn love, to tolerate emotional starvation. So now, even as an adult, she is drawn to the familiar, men who reflect her earliest blueprint of love. This isn't about fault. It's about frequency. We attract not just what we want, but what we are prepared to hold. And preparation doesn't mean pretending. It means healing. It means becoming the kind of person who doesn't confuse intensity for intimacy, who doesn't tolerate inconsistency just to avoid being alone. When you begin to tend to your inner terrain, you stop needing others to complete you. You stop assigning them the job of making you feel enough. And this changes how you love. You stop trying to possess. You begin to support. You stop trying to change someone to soothe your own discomfort. You begin to honor their journey while remaining anchored in your own. Relationships are mirrors not just in their harmony, but in their conflict. When someone triggers you, it's easy to focus on what they did. But a more powerful question is, what within me is being touched? Where is this reaction coming from? And how long have I been carrying this? This reflection is not always comfortable, but it is always liberating. because it returns power to its rightful place. Within, a couple once came to a relationship counselor after years of fighting. They loved each other, but they couldn't stop hurting each other. The therapist didn't start with communication techniques. She asked each of them to write a letter, not to each other, but to their younger selves. What emerged was profound. The woman realized she had never felt safe expressing anger because, as a child, anger led to punishment. So she learned to suppress it until it exploded. The man realized he had learned to shut down emotionally because vulnerability was mocked in his home. So he withdrew the moment he felt unsafe. They weren't bad partners. They were wounded children trying to navigate adult relationships without the tools they needed. And when they saw that, the dynamic shifted. Not overnight, but gradually. Because now, instead of trying to fix each other, they began to support each other in healing. This is the sacredness of understanding relationships as mirrors. Every interaction becomes an opportunity, not just to connect, but to awaken, to see yourself through the eyes of another, to grow not in spite of love, but because of it. But this growth only happens when you are honest, when you stop pretending, when you let go of the idea that someone else is responsible for your happiness. No one is, and no one should be. Happiness, peace, clarity, these are inner projects. And when you commit to them, your relationships become clearer too. People who are not aligned will fall away. People who are meant to walk with you will draw closer. Not because you chase them, but because your energy becomes an invitation, not a plea. So let the silence shape you. Let the mirror humble you. And in doing so, let your life become a reflection of your inner peace. Not perfection, but presence. And presence, unlike noise, needs no explanation. It simply is. There is a common misunderstanding in the way we speak about emotions. We are often taught to either suppress them completely or to release them without boundary. Both extremes lead to imbalance. In one, you become hardened, disconnected from your own heart. In the other, you become unstable, tossed around by every changing feeling. But there is a middle path, one that is neither repression nor indulgence. It is emotional discipline. And this discipline is not cold or mechanical. It is a form of inner strength, a quiet wisdom that allows you to experience your emotions fully without being ruled by them. To feel deeply is not weakness. In fact, the ability to feel is what makes us human. But to be enslaved by every emotional impulse is to lose freedom. Emotional discipline is the practice of allowing feelings to arise without instantly reacting to them. It is the ability to sit with discomfort without lashing out. It is learning to speak from clarity, not chaos. In relationships, this kind of discipline becomes the very structure that holds love in place. Because love, despite its beauty, is not always gentle. It brings up old fears, buried insecurities, and hidden wounds. Without emotional maturity, those moments of vulnerability turn into moments of destruction. One partner criticizes, the other shuts down. One raises their voice, the other retaliates. And what began as a small spark of tension becomes a wildfire of misunderstanding. But imagine instead a relationship where both people understand their emotional patterns, where anger doesn't immediately translate into yelling, but into reflection, where sadness isn't used as manipulation, but is expressed with honesty, where space is given for emotions to be felt, without making the other person responsible for fixing or carrying them. That kind of relationship doesn't come from luck. It comes from emotional discipline. There was once a young couple who struggled deeply with communication. The man was expressive, passionate, quick to speak. The woman was sensitive, introspective, often overwhelmed. In every disagreement, their patterns would collide. He would speak without pause, trying to resolve everything quickly. She would shut down, unable to process so much intensity. This caused frustration on both sides. He saw her silence as rejection. She saw his urgency as aggression. One evening, after another long argument, the woman asked a simple question. "What are you really afraid of?" The question silenced the room, not because it was dramatic, but because it pierced through the noise. He paused, sat back, and after a long silence said, "I'm afraid that if we don't fix it now, you'll walk away." She looked at him, softened by the honesty, and replied, "I shut down because I feel unsafe when things move too fast." That moment didn't solve all their problems, but it revealed something crucial. Underneath every emotional reaction is an unmet need, a hidden fear, or a story we've been telling ourselves for years. When you practice emotional discipline, you begin to access these deeper layers. You stop reacting from the surface and you begin to respond from truth. Emotional regulation is not about pretending you're unaffected. It's about giving your feelings space to breathe without allowing them to dictate your actions. This is especially important in close relationships. The people we love most are also the ones who trigger us most deeply. Not because they are harmful, but because they mirror the parts of ourselves that are still unhealed. A careless word can remind you of being overlooked as a child. A forgotten promise can reopen the wound of abandonment. A moment of distance can feel like betrayal, even when it's simply exhaustion. Without discipline, these emotional echoes become explosive. But with discipline, they become opportunities for healing. It's important to remember that emotional intelligence doesn't mean avoiding emotion. It means navigating it wisely. Neuroscience has shown that when we are emotionally triggered, the amygdala, the brain's fear center, becomes hyperactive. In this state, rational thinking is reduced. We become reactive, impulsive. The discipline is not to suppress the amygdala, but to engage the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for self-control, empathy, and reason. This happens when we pause, when we breathe, when we step back before responding. One simple practice that transforms emotional reactivity is the 3-breath rule. When you feel triggered, pause and take 3 slow, conscious breaths. Inhale gently, exhale slowly. This short space is enough to shift your brain out of fight or flight and into reflection. It's not magic, it's biology, and it creates space where choice becomes possible. A man once described how this practice saved his relationship with his teenage daughter. Every conversation with her used to turn into an argument. He felt disrespected, she felt misunderstood. One day, during a heated exchange, he remembered the 3-breath rule. Instead of shouting, he paused. 3 breaths. In that short silence, he realized his anger wasn't about her. It was about his fear that he was failing as a father. With this clarity, he softened his voice and said, "I'm scared I'm losing you." That moment changed everything. She cried, and for the first time in years, they hugged. That's the power of emotional discipline. It turns walls into bridges. It transforms conflict into connection. Not by controlling others, but by leading yourself. But the journey to emotional discipline isn't easy. It often begins with discomfort, with recognizing how often we use emotion as a weapon, sarcasm to deflect pain, silence to punish, tears to manipulate. We must be honest with ourselves, not in shame, but in awareness. Awareness is the first step toward mastery, and mastery doesn't mean perfection. It means presence. It means staying conscious, even when you're hurt, especially when you're hurt. Because it's in those moments that your character is formed. Anyone can be kind when things are smooth, but true discipline is revealed in the storm. There's a powerful story of a woman who had been cheated on by her husband. The betrayal shook her to her core. She felt rage, grief, confusion. Everyone around her, urged her to scream, to shame him, to walk away. But she chose a different path, not one of passivity, but of clarity. She took time. She didn't react immediately. She journaled, meditated, sought counsel. She cried, but she did not destroy. When she finally sat down to speak with him, her words were measured. "You broke something sacred," she said, "and now I need to decide what I will rebuild, with or without you." Her strength didn't come from suppressing her pain. It came from honoring it, without being consumed by it. Her discipline didn't erase the wound. It held it gently until she was ready to move forward. In romantic relationships, especially, this kind of discipline becomes essential. Love often reveals our rawest selves, the part that wants to be seen, held, chosen. When that need feels unmet, it's tempting to lash out or withdraw. But emotional discipline teaches us to sit with those moments, to feel the ache without needing to escape it, to ask, what am I really feeling? What do I need right now? Can I communicate that without blaming? Communication rooted in emotional discipline sounds different. It doesn't accuse, it expresses. It doesn't demand, it invites. Instead of saying, "You never listen to me," it says, "When I feel unheard, I start to believe my voice doesn't matter. I need your presence right now." That kind of vulnerability requires strength, the strength to feel without collapsing, the strength to ask without clinging. And yet, society often tells us that strength means not needing anyone. But true strength is the ability to need without losing yourself, to love without becoming dependent, to hurt without becoming bitter. Emotional discipline also teaches us the power of timing. Not every conversation must happen in the heat of the moment. Sometimes space is sacred. Sometimes silence heals more than words. When emotions run high, it's easy to say things we don't mean. Words spoken in anger often leave scars deeper than silence ever could. There's wisdom in knowing when to speak and when to wait, when to hold and when to release, when to lean in and when to step back. This wisdom isn't learned in books. It's cultivated in moments of choice. When you feel the surge of anger rising and you pause, when tears threaten to overflow and you allow them without shame, when confusion clouds your mind and you breathe instead of react. Over time, this practice becomes natural. Your nervous system learns that it's safe to feel without fleeing. You begin to trust yourself, and when you trust yourself, others feel safe around you. This is one of the most underrated gifts in relationships, being someone who others feel emotionally safe with. Emotional safety doesn't mean avoiding hard truths. It means expressing them without harm. It means creating a space where both people can be human, flawed, emotional, growing. A space where love is not fragile, but resilient. There's a beautiful example of this in a long married couple. After 30 years together, they still had disagreements. But one thing was different. They never raised their voices. When asked their secret, the wife said, "We promised each other early on. Pain may visit, but we will not give it the microphone." Their discipline didn't make their relationship perfect. It made it peaceful. That peace doesn't come from never feeling. It comes from feeling fully and choosing wisely. And that is the heart of emotional discipline. It is the space between the emotion and the action, the pause between the pain and the response. In that space, there is choice. And in that choice, there is freedom. It is a strange truth that the people who run the loudest, who chase after validation and try to shape every situation to their advantage, often find themselves the loneliest. And yet, those who become still within, who cultivate a certain calm in the storm of life, seem to draw others in without trying. Their presence doesn't push or pull, it simply is. And in that stillness, something profound happens. Peace within is not passivity. It's not about shrinking or surrendering or becoming indifferent to life. Rather, it is the quiet strength of a mind that has learned to respond instead of react, a heart that has forgiven enough to stop bleeding into every conversation, and a body that no longer clenches in anticipation of chaos. That kind of peace doesn't only belong to monks or philosophers. It belongs to anyone who is willing to do the work within. And when you arrive at it, the outside world begins to rearrange itself to match. This is not magic, it is resonance. You see, the nervous system is contagious. Just as yawns spread in a room full of people, so too does anxiety, so too does grounded calm. In neuroscience, the concept of interpersonal neurobiology describes how human beings are wired to co-regulate one another. Our internal states communicate far louder than our words. When your inner world becomes peaceful, those around you can feel it, even if they don't consciously know what changed. Have you ever been in the presence of someone who made you feel safe without saying anything? They didn't rush to speak. They didn't flood the space with opinions. They didn't fill the silence with noise. Yet their gaze, their breath, their energy, somehow it invited you to breathe easier. That is the power of a peaceful inner world. The mistake many people make in relationships, whether romantic, familial, or professional, is believing that connection is about what we say or do to others. But true connection begins much earlier in how we relate to ourselves. A person who cannot sit in silence without feeling uneasy will unconsciously sabotage peace when it appears in their relationship. A person who is constantly suspicious of their own worth will distort love when it's offered. A person who has not forgiven themselves will project blame onto others. This is why inner work is not a luxury, it is a prerequisite for any meaningful connection. Consider a couple sitting at a dinner table. One partner is agitated, scrolling their phone, sighing heavily, glancing around. The other notices, stiffens slightly, and asks, "Is something wrong?" The first shrugs it off. "No, I'm fine." But everything in their tone, their body, their avoidance says otherwise. The second partner now feels the tension, unsure if they should press or pull back. The meal becomes a quiet battleground of unspoken emotions. No fight occurred, no insult was exchanged, yet the energy between them is frayed. Now imagine the same scene, but this time, the partner who feels upset recognizes their inner agitation. Instead of projecting it or burying it, they take a breath. They place the phone down. They close their eyes for a moment and center themselves. Then they say, "I think I'm feeling overwhelmed today. I'm sorry if I brought that energy into dinner." That one honest sentence, rooted in self-awareness, shifts the entire evening. The other partner softens. The tension dissolves. Space opens for connection. This is the quiet transformation that happens when you tend to your inner peace. Emotional maturity is not about being happy all the time. It's about being honest with what's happening inside you and not letting that inner weather become someone else's storm. When you are peaceful within, you no longer feel the need to control people to feel safe. You stop trying to read minds or force outcomes. You learn to let people be, and in doing so, you grant yourself that same freedom. One of the most liberating truths in relationship dynamics is this: not every mood is a message, and not every emotion needs an audience. When your inner world is chaotic, you look for someone to hand the weight to. But when it is calm, you can hold that weight, examine it, and release it without damage. That's a sign of power, not weakness. A woman once shared her story of being married to a man who was easily triggered by the smallest things. Misplaced keys, delays in dinner, the sound of the television. She described how she used to walk on eggshells, constantly adjusting herself to avoid his mood swings. One day, she decided to change, not him, but herself. She began meditating, journaling, going on long walks alone. She stopped reacting. She stopped apologizing for things she didn't do. She stopped absorbing his energy. Instead of meeting his fire with fire, she became water. At first, he grew louder, then confused, then quiet. She said, "It's as if my peace gave him nothing to fight with." And eventually, he had to confront himself. Not every relationship survives that transformation, but the ones that do evolve. It's also important to understand that inner peace is not about suppressing emotions. In fact, it's the opposite. It's about allowing them to arise, acknowledging them, and then releasing them without clinging. The root of suffering, according to many Eastern traditions, is attachment, not only to people or things, but to thoughts, beliefs, and identities that no longer serve us. A common trap in modern relationships is the desire to be right. But what if being right cost you your peace? What if clinging to pride builds a wall where there could have been a bridge? When you prioritize inner harmony over external validation, you begin to choose your responses rather than be enslaved by your triggers. That's what emotional discipline looks like. One practical exercise for this is called pause and presence. Before reacting to someone's words or behavior, pause. Bring your attention to your breath. Ask yourself silently, what is real right now? What am I feeling? Is this about them or something unresolved in me? That moment of reflection creates space between stimulus and response. And in that space is your freedom. Another valuable principle comes from neuroscience. The more we rehearse emotional reactions, the stronger those neural pathways become. In other words, every time you react with anger, you make it easier to be angry next time. But every time you choose calm, you strengthen that inner muscle. Peace is a habit, built one breath at a time. Nowhere is this more evident than in parenting. Children don't learn emotional regulation from lectures. They learn it from how you handle your own emotions. A parent who yells teaches yelling. A parent who breathes teaches breathing. If your inner world is turbulent, your children will mirror that turbulence. If your heart is grounded, they will root themselves in that soil. In romantic relationships, inner peace makes space for both people to grow. You no longer seek your partner to complete you. Instead, you become two whole individuals walking alongside each other. You stop demanding love in a specific language and start learning each other's dialects. You don't confuse passion with drama or closeness with control. You allow love to breathe. A peaceful person listens differently. They don't listen to attack or defend. They listen to understand. They are not easily offended because their ego is not in the driver's seat. They don't need to win arguments because they are not at war. Their dignity is not fragile. This does not mean they are passive. Inner peace also knows when to walk away. But it walks away without burning the house down. It leaves without bitterness. It chooses self-respect over self-destruction. Peace is not about avoiding difficult conversations. It's about entering them with clarity instead of chaos. It's the difference between saying, "You always hurt me," and saying, "When this happens, I feel hurt." The former accuses, the latter reveals. One builds a wall, the other opens a door. When you cultivate peace within, your relationships shift in subtle but powerful ways. People feel safer around you. Not because you are perfect, but because you are present. Your presence becomes a refuge. Your words carry weight, not volume. Your love becomes less needy, more nourishing. And perhaps most importantly, you stop abandoning yourself to please others. It's a beautiful paradox. When you stop chasing love, you attract it. When you stop forcing people to understand you, they start listening. When you become content within your own soul, you stop trying to fill your emptiness with someone else's presence. One quiet afternoon, a man sat by a river watching the water move without resistance. He noticed how it flowed around rocks, over roots, never fighting, always adapting. Yet it reached its destination, always. That's what peace is like. It doesn't shout, it doesn't dominate, but it transforms everything it touches. And so it is with you. When your inner world becomes peaceful, the world outside starts to reflect that peace. Not because the world changes, but because you do. You begin to see people through a lens of compassion instead of fear. You no longer need to prove your worth because you have already accepted it. You stop looking for home in others because you have built it inside yourself. From that place, all relationships become cleaner, clearer, and more genuine. You no longer settle for crumbs when you carry the whole loaf within. You don't beg for respect, you embody it. You don't chase love, you radiate it. And in this state of being, even your silence speaks volumes. This is the quiet power of a peaceful inner world. It does not control, it influences. It does not demand, it invites. And through its stillness, it transforms every relationship it touches, starting with the one you hold with yourself. When the path becomes unclear, when relationships test your boundaries, and when the world urges you to chase everything but your own peace, return to yourself. The journey of focusing only on yourself is not about withdrawing from life. It's about returning to the origin of all your actions, thoughts, and emotions. It is in the silence of self-reflection that you begin to hear what truly matters. It is in choosing your own evolution over external validation that you begin to reclaim your inner power. You were never meant to be everything for everyone. You were meant to be whole within yourself, and from that wholeness to give consciously, not out of lack or desperation, but from clarity, discernment, and truth. There is no greater act of love than knowing yourself deeply. No greater path to peace than mastering your own energy. No deeper relationship than the one you cultivate within. Let this year, this season, this moment be the turning point. Not where you lost yourself trying to meet expectations, but where you chose with intention to rise, to pause, to focus inward, and in doing so, unlocked the strength to walk in alignment. Your relationships will mirror this transformation. Your emotions will soften and strengthen in tandem, and your life, slowly, wisely, and powerfully, will begin to reflect the quiet, steady force of someone who finally remembered who they are. You don't need the world to see you. You need to see yourself clearly, compassionately, and completely. Everything begins there. If this message has sparked something within you, perhaps a deeper question, a quiet realization, or even the courage to begin again, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe to Self-Mastery so you never miss the guidance that keeps you grounded and growing. Share this with someone you care about, someone who may be seeking clarity, strength, or simply a moment of stillness in their journey. And most importantly, leave a comment below. What part of today's message stayed with you the most? Your reflection might be the exact thing someone else needs to hear.